A few months ago, I took a look at Michael Burry's portfolio and I was shocked. I had an intuition that he could be expecting a major conflict, maybe even a war. But back then, I didn't have all the facts to back that up. So if I had made a video, I knew that many people would think I'm just crazy. But now, with the entire situation in Ukraine, well, doesn't sound that crazy anymore, and I can finally present you with all the information that I've gathered to maybe show you that it is an actual possibility. Burry sold almost everything he had in his portfolio back in the third quarter of 2021. But unfortunately, most people only focused on the bets he had against tech companies. Everyone was saying, you see, Burry was wrong. He is now admitting that these companies will continue to grow, and as a consequence, he lost his bet. Now, here's the problem with that kind of thinking. If he knew that these tech companies would continue to rise in value, he would put his money on these stocks. What this is signaling to us is that Burry doesn't actually know what's going to happen. He probably is thinking that volatility in many of these risk on assets is rising to an extent that makes it extremely difficult to figure out what's going to happen. Not only that, he could be thinking that a major event could absolutely bring the prices of many of these stocks to hell. So it's not really intelligent to focus all our attention in just part of the moves he made. And rather, what really interests me is what he still had in the third quarter of 2021. Because here's the thing. If this guy is so bearish on the market, on the economy, why is he still holding some shares and even adding some shares to his portfolio? So let's take a look at what Michael Burry was holding back in the third quarter of 2021. First of all, about 40% of his portfolio was on CVS stocks. CVS is actually a good company. It was not overvalued at all back when he acquired his stocks. People are really concerned about Omicron, even though the death rate is much lower. People are still contracting this disease. So certainly CVS is going to benefit from this reality. And overall, I think it was a great decision Burry did. Now let's take a look at the buys that is way more relevant for us. We begin with CNexus, which is a biotech company. He didn't put a lot of money. He put about $1 million, which is not something great for him. And apparently, this biotech company is developing an oral antifungal agent. Honestly, I don't know exactly how that's relevant. I'm not a medical doctor as Burry is, but maybe he sees value in this company. Overall, biotech companies have also been mostly overvalued, so maybe he's seeing something different in Kinekis. I don't know even how to say it. The other company was DNow, also around $1 million. And this choice is actually quite relevant. Here's why. It's basically an advanced technology to help organizations monitor and reduce their carbon footprint, meeting their greenhouse gas emission targets and minimizing fuel gas waste. So why is that relevant? Well, first of all, because Burry sold many stocks he had of energy companies, right? Directly some oil companies. So maybe he's thinking, you know what? this entire agenda of reducing gas emissions, the entire agenda of the so-called Great Reset, maybe it's something that he's betting that the future will actually be like that. We can't be certain, but it looks like he's not betting on commodities anymore, or anything like that. Now we get to the most relevant part of his holdings, which is Lockheed Martin. Guys, first of all, it's a major buy when we compare to the other companies, right? First of all, Lockheed Martin, financially speaking, is a pretty reasonable company. They have a pretty predictable stream of revenue. They have contracts that are maybe that lasts for 5, 6 years with the government. So it's way more reasonable, way more predictable in terms of where it's going. But at the same time, there are some stuff that people are missing that we can link with what's happening in Ukraine right now. First of all, Lockheed Martin is the number one company in terms of receiving defense revenue. Okay? It's really considerable. Not only that, Lockheed Martin, when we take a look at donations, lobbying, they're actually really diverse and smart. And guys, I don't want to get into politics or any of that. I'm doing an analysis that's amoral, so I'm not going to use this kind of information to attack either sides, as you will see. But it's considerable, right? It's extremely considerable that Lockheed Martin donated a good amount of money to both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, right? That's the smart way to do lobbying. You put your bets in either side. Even in Bernie Sanders, to be frank, okay? So, they are actually quite intelligent with their political donations. And what's really interesting is that it seems like Lockheed Martin has some influence within the Biden administration. We also know that many people in the U.S. military are actually concerned that the U.S. is not as advanced as China and Russia on hypersonic tech, as a Space Force general warned a couple of months ago. So that's something very considerable. Lockheed Martin is in that kind of business. Not only that, and when we take a look at what's happening in Ukraine right now with NATO pressing Russia, oh boy, things are looking good for Lockheed Martin. Myself, I bought some stock a couple of months ago, and it seems like they're in a good spot. F-35 to make NATO's Southern Air Policing debut. The Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning is to be deployed on NATO's Southern Air Policing mission for the first time, with the Netherlands announcing on 21st January it is sending jets to Bulgaria. And it's not just Netherlands. It's actually many countries that are part of NATO are actually acquiring stuff from Lockheed Martin. Take a look at this article. Biden speaks with Finland's president about allying tension at Ukrainian border. And if you're aware of what's happening, even the Nordic countries are now engaging in the possibility of actually being part of NATO. And in this talk, it's really interesting. President Joe Biden spoke on the phone with the Finnish president regarding their shared concern over the increasing Russian militarization along the Ukrainian border. So, they just talked for a little bit. And then a few months later, look at what we have. Finland this month ordered $11 billion worth of F-35 fighters from U.S. warplane manufacturer Lockheed Martin. President Sauli Niinistö told his counterpart, that Mr. Biden, that he appreciated the door to NATO being kept open. Right? So, it looks like Biden has a nice relationship with Lockheed Martin. And I'm not saying this trying to judge Biden, I'm just trying to, understand the situation here. It's up to you to put a value on it. And what's really interesting is that it doesn't stop just at some European countries. Ukraine itself was talking to Lockheed Martin and actually got some of their airplanes. You see, Lockheed Martin to offer new and used F-16 Vipers to Ukraine, and even that there's the actual possibility that they will build a spaceport in Ukraine that will actually maybe use some of Lockheed's products. So certainly with the entire tension and the Ukrainian borders and this entire conflict with Russia, it's looking pretty good for those that are holding Lockheed Martin stocks. And so, it looks like at least Burry got lucky with this situation, right? And when we connect this choice of buying Lockheed Martin a couple of months ago with his previous statements, then we may have more reasons to believe that he was actually betting on a conflict. You see, you may remember that he said the following: more speculation than the 1920s, more overvaluation than the 1990s, more geopolitical and economic strife than the 1970s, players grabbing the barrel of Kyle Rittenhouse rifle while the SEC and the Fed not approvingly. So he was not being so transparent. He was being a little bit cryptic, but the most important thing is the following: what would be the final outcome of this kind of policy that the Federal Reserve has implemented in the United States after the COVID pandemic? Right? He didn't explicitly said what I'm going to bring to you. But when we have a reality with more speculation than the 1920s, with more overvaluation than the 1990s, and more geopolitical and economic strife than the 1970s, governments may start doing crazy stuff. Let's say you are a president that has many issues in your hand. You're not extremely popular. You're being criticized for several things. Historically, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but historically, politicians find war, find conflicts as a solution for that. Sometimes internal conflicts, meaning civil wars. Maybe that was the reason why he was putting some money in private prisons, or at least just inequality overall. Inequality itself tends to bring violence to the streets, as a consequence, imprisonments. So maybe that was the reason why he was betting on private prisons. Maybe he realized that it was not going to be an internal conflict within the United States, but rather maybe an external conflict like in Ukraine right now. But the most important part is, I think he didn't say this outright in his tweets, but what is the final outcome of all of this? The final outcome could be a war as means of justifying some crazy policies, some authoritarian policies within the United States, within Western countries. When we take a look at history, almost every nation that implemented a monetary policy that's not even close to what the Fed has done, every single time there are social consequences that are quite dramatic. Sometimes it ends up with wars. That's something that we see for the past 500, 600 years. So it's something quite serious. And I honestly can't be certain that Burry was betting and still is betting on wars. I would love to see his newest update in terms of what he's holding or what he bought, what he sold. But looking at Q3 2021, connecting this with our latest developments in Ukraine, it looks like he could be, putting his bets on a major conflict. And actually, if you have reasons to believe that all that I said in this video is just insanity, that it's not going to happen, it's not true, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm quite humble insofar as my opinions are concerned. I don't have all the truth in the universe. I actually love to view another possibility, and I think that's the most strategic thing we can do right now. No one actually knows what will be the final outcome of all these different things. But in any case, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe, and I see you in the next one.